Okay, Jim, I'd like to ask you why you think theosis is genius.
Well, let's get one thing straight to begin with. By theosis, we mean transfiguration, the old term for which, or in some is still metamorphosis, which is a sort of polymorphous transcendence. One goes from mortality to immortality. This is what theosis is, apotheosis, and it really means becoming immortalized. So instead of being merely a sort of disappearance of flesh and bone and the standard daily envisagement that we mutually share as mortals, there is, as it were, a means whereby one can take this flesh up into deific reality and become a god. Now, in my case, when I say theosis is genius, equal to genius, equivalent, what I really mean is because I was given a particular, as far as I know, particular to me, though others might have received something similar, I was given a gift by the Almighty, by Christ himself, which is the crown of thorns. Now, this is a sort of spiritual placement, a reality, a spiritual reality. And this crown of thorns is to do with suffering intellect. Now, let me just, if I could, I've recourse to my notebook, which has got bits here and bits there. This is not a sequential and or narrative segue. It's not. It's more fractured, but therefore allow me to induct you, if you will, a little bit at a time. So I've written, in this world of appalling cruelty from hell towards defenseless creatures, human, animal, I'm ashamed to be alive. Hopefully, I live in this world as a son of God to uphold and hopefully to manifest certain virtues that I believe are dear to him, like a loving heart, loving kindness, sympathy for the afflicted or victimized, etc. But terrible horrors are suffered, maximum maximorum. Now, let me just flip, as it were, slip sideways and talk about Leibniz. He was an earlier, 60 years ago, I fell in love with some of Leibniz's ideas, basically about what was called scientia generalis, which basically means episteme, the wish to know truth, to be knowledgeable about the high things in existence. You have your own totem pole, but obviously for me, truth was the main one. And I found later, after a lot of work, labour in the vineyards of God, that truth and holiness or sanctity, sanctification, which leads to theosis, these are its necessary garlands or accompaniments. Now, I actually made a note about Leibniz. I said, well, Leibniz using reductio ad absurdum, which the Greeks called eis to adunaton apodexis, which basically means the reduction to an impossible reduction. If you use this, you therefore presume that its opposite, if this is a falsehood, its opposite is true. Unfortunately, this law of Leibniz does not hold for infinite quantities, or what I create things called infinite sentences. Now, I've actually said Leibniz using reductio absurdum for arithmetical lines which contain surds, irrationals, is absurd. The great rationalist is nothing of the kind, because he was treading on infinities, which were my arithmetical and philosophical studies. These were, I am the doctor of infinity, at least in my own universe, all right? So I thought the befuddling of the impossible by the impossible never once pulled philosophers up short enough for them to break through to the divine. To break through to divinity is the goal of true philosophy. It is the achieved objective of religion in its highest, i.e. Christian sense, in which is ruled over by this vast mysterious being, Trinity and Super-Trinity, the three perfections of Godhead rest on one perfect man who is God, Christ Almighty, my Lord and Saviour, as I said. But I thought infinity is a means of numerical aussperrend, a locking out. Infinity in mathematics locks one out of the divine. And when I was a mathematician, I created a form of numbers which unlocked the infinite and allowed me into this holy, this splendiferous, miraculous abundance of Godhead, where the increate, the infinite increate reigns supreme in its reality rather than the sort of aberrant, abstract, dumbing down of which you get in mathematics and philosophy. So I spent 60 years, but decades writing this down and also trying to illustrate it, because where words fail or where numbers fail in a sort of script, as a finite script, then possibly art can open other vistas, visual vistas, which conjoin with the highest point of mind, nous, divine intellect, to give the requisite visionary states, the states necessary to see God. Now, those who think that God cannot become visible in his majesty and in his persons, and sich in himself per se, that God cannot be seen. Or there is an old saying, no man can see God and live. Exactly. If you see God, you die to mortality and you become alive to immortality. That's the paradox in that particular statement. Now, is that enough for this?